Babysitters of Redditors. What is funniest NSFW scariest incident that happened when you babysat twin 9-year-old boys a few years ago? The parents didn't even leave the house, they just locked themselves upstairs while I played video games and made dinner for the kids. I had to keep making the games louder to cover up the sounds that were coming out of the bedroom, a mixture of pain and pleasure. That's amazing. When will you be back? Oh, we are not leaving. But there isn't enough therapy in the world to make you okay with what you would see if you opened the bedroom door. We'll be done at 8:00. Look, sad wife atop of the stairs with a whip in hand. Make that by 9 kid had a seizure. I thought he was throwing a tantrum. I said, fine, you can have a cookie, but only one. Then his sister came and told me what was going on. Yeah, that wasn't fun. First time babysitting, and his 12-year-old sister has to take the ropes and handle her brother having a seizure. Apparently they weren't all that rare and were pretty mild, but it sure threw me for a loop, especially since I hadn't been informed of this kid's epilepsy. When I was 16, I was babysitting my cousin's 4-year-olds. He and I were briefly speaking on the phone, and when I got off the line, I could not find her anywhere. Needless to say, I lost my sheet and freaked the duck, and I knew that her favorite game was hide and go seek, so I started wandering around the house and playfully saying, where is she? Is she in the kitchen? Silence. Is she in the bathroom? Silence. Is she in the closet? And from the closet I hear no. Babysitting a 2-year-old girl that I work with at the daycare I taught at. I put her in her crib and I go out to watch TV when I hear something over the baby monitor. I turn it up and she's whispering, row, 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 and then suddenly she screamed super loud. She kept doing this over and over, and it got creepier and creepier until I remember that we had just taught the kids in the daycare a new verse, row, row, row your boat. If you see a crocodile, don't forget to scream. And then everyone screams. I felt so bad for teaching her that she must have freaked her parents out a lot. And a babysitter when I was like 6 or 7. Every few nights she used to walk around in a thong, and one time I asked if I could see her boobs, so she showed them to me. Pretty sure if I was the rat bastard, she could have gotten in huge trouble, but a pimp never snatches. Not a babysitter, but dated one in high school. We had just started dating and she had to babysit a couple of her neighbors' boys who I'm going to estimate were around 8 to 10 years old. A game plan for the night was to have the kids in bed by 8:00 p.m. and get cozy on the couch. What she ended up getting was an hour of cartoons followed by a 17-year-old guy wearing a Donatello Ninja Turtle mask and plastic bow being chased around by 2 boys with plastic swords. I can't even count how many times she said, all right guys, I think it's time for bed. Weird moment number 1 from that night. She says, you're going to have a lot of growing up to do before we have kids. Relationship didn't last a month after what she published a poem about my small pen 15 to her MySpace account. Weird moment number 2, her parents getting home and seeing a strange car in the driveway, rushing into the house and seeing their children beating up a 17-year-old with toys whilst the sitter is sitting on the couch reading Cosmo. First thing they said is, we are not paying you 2 good times. I've been working with kids for over 15 years, mostly as a nanny, and man, I have seen some shit, but here's the one that scarred me for life. I was babysitting a brother 9 and sister 7 who always acted out pretty badly. They had the kind of parents who were more concerned with being their kids' mothers than being actual parents. It's a recipe for disaster. These kids were pretty disrespectful towards me and downright nasty towards each other. One night I was making dinner in the kitchen while they were watching TV in the living room. I had a clear view of them and could hear them arguing about what to watch. When the sister refused to change the channel, the brother whipped out his pen 15, stood over her and threatened to pee on her unless she changed the channel. When she called out for me, he changed tactics and full on smacked her in the face with his little wong. I just stood there, horrified, no idea how to address what just happened. I ended up telling him to pull up his pants and continued cooking, because Jesus stuck in Christ, that sheet was way beyond my skill level. Edit. I'm so glad you guys are focusing on what was clearly the main point of my comment. When I was around 16, I babysat for a family friend while they went to a dinner party for boys ages 12 to 6 or so. The family were dog sitting a huge Rottweiler, and the youngest boy had a pet gerbil. An hour or so goes by and I've exhausted most of my ideas to keep the boys entertained, so I take them out front to play home run derby. After a few rounds. The oldest hits the pool over the house and into their backyard, so I send him to get it. Minutes pass and he doesn't return, so I sent the second oldest to check on him. After a few minutes he doesn't return either. I start to worry, so I take the two youngest with me into the house. As soon as I open the door, I hear screaming and start to freak. I run to the kitchen to find both boys in hysterics, crying on the phone. They are so worked up I can't understand what they're saying. That's when I noticed the screen. Daughter, the backyard had been torn open. I walk toward the backyard and that's when I see it. Their headless pet gerbil hanging out of the Rottweiler's mouth. Currently babys at 9 and 12-year-old boys. They have a lot of energy actually. They're just flat out nuts, and so there is constant roughhousing. One time the 12-year-old got a little cut on his leg and started bleeding. I went to look at it, but he flinched and pushed me away. Then he proceeded to wipe the blood off of his leg, streaked it under each eye, and hiss at me. The pay is good. When I was 21, I was a nanny for a 4-year-old girl. We had finished swimming at their country club and were in the locker room changing. As I was changing my top, she looks at me and says, "My mom has those too." I asked her, "What does she haven't?" She said, "Breasts." I didn't say anything and just continued getting dressed. She paused for a second and then said, "Except as a really long." I had to bite my cheek to keep from laughing. I let my parents babysit my daughters once. When we came home, the kids were sitting close together in another part of the house. After my parents left, it was explained to us that our 2-year-old spilled milk on the table and grandpa lost it first and last time. Someone hacked the video baby monitor while I was nannying. Once I put the kid down for a nap and went down to make myself lunch with the monitor set up on the kitchen counter. I heard some small noises from it but assumed it was him moving around in his sleep. Then the guy hacking into it started singing "Rock-a-bye Baby" and this creepy childlike voice. I and up to the kids' room thinking someone had broken in and freaked the duck out. Took me about 10 minutes to realize it was coming from the monitor. Guy kept singing as I was panicking. The asshole, and I unplugged that sheet. The parents flipped when I told them and got the cops involved. A few days later they found out it was the neighbor, some 30-something dude living in his parents' basement. I was babysitting a 2-year-old. He was playing on the couch pillows instead of a back cushion. My couch has a bunch of pillows. All of a sudden he started crying. He bumped his head on the corner of the couch, not sharp, and it started to profusely bleed. I grabbed him and sat him on the counter so I could see where it was coming from. Just under his eyebrow was gashed open. I cleaned it up as best as I could, gave him some children's Tylenol and called his mom. They were able to glue it back together. I felt so bad. When I was about 14, I watched over 2 children for a summer. It was a pretty sweet gig, as the 11-year-old girl always made lunch for us and was pretty self-sufficient, and the 8-year-old boy just wanted to play video games and worship me. I am a little hazy on the details, but one day I had to ground the girl for doing something. I knew this would get to her, as she wanted to be out with the neighborhood kids. I go out front to see kids sneaking into the house from the second-story window. At this point I run upstairs, grab the 3 girls, shot to out the front door, and take the one I watch over and put her in the bathroom and ask the 9-year-old boy to watch her. At this point there are 10 to 15 kids trying to get into the house to set her free like she is some political prisoner. I closed all the windows upstairs just to find more coming in the back door. I pushed the kids outside and locked the house, completely barricading the doors. As the kids are banging on the house like a zombie nightmare, I called the dad at this point and told him what was up, and that if he didn't show up I would need to call the cops. He showed up 15 minutes, steaming mad at his daughter. I guess he had the adult I am taking over this situation, because as soon as he got out of his truck the kids scatter like roaches. Nothing bad happened in the end, and her parents made her call and apologize for steering that mess up. Crazy day to be making like $6 an hour. I was babysitting 2 little girls at their parents' house when I was about 15. We were sitting in the living room watching the Disney Channel when sudden the front door handle starts moving and someone tries to come in. I didn't lock the door after the parents left, so they were able to walk right in. Luckily the family also had 5 dogs, all large breeds, that immediately jumped into action and ran towards the front door barking bloodily. Merdad, the front door only opened about half an inch before it was pulled shut. I jumped up and locked the doors and windows. It scared the shit out of the 3 of us. I checked to see if there was anyone outside running away but didn't see anyone. I don't know what would have happened without those dogs. I was babysitting two brothers, one was maybe 7 and the other about 3. I should mention that the dad was a contractor, and he had a lot of random construction things in the backyard. The 7-year-old picked up a dowel that was about 4 feet long and pretended to be a Jedi with a double bladed lightsaber. He wound up smacking his brother in the face, and the 3-year-old was flung across the patio. The air that kid got was pretty impressive, and I laughed until I saw that the kid was actually hurt, and then I felt kind of bad. The 3-year-old was a little sheet, and he had been torturing me and the older brother for the past hour though, so I didn't feel that bad when I babysat my little brother. A few years ago, someone tried to break into the apartment we lived in. I was about 13 back then, and we were both scared Hitlers. I don't know why they gave up, but I like to think it was the stench sheet wafting from my pants out of the building. When I was about 12 or so, I babysat a couple of brothers across the street from me. Their regular babysit lifts 2 doors down but couldn't make its. I helped out. It ended up with me locking myself in the bedroom with the youngest brother, who was about 6, would be my guess, while the older brother tried to stop through the door with a huge butcher knife. That kid might have been 8 or so. That was definitely the last time I babysat for them. I told the other babysitter that he was on his own from now on. When I was 12, I babysat in 7-year-old girl and a 5-year-old boy. The boy went to the bathroom and then started screaming for me, so I go in, and his pants are around his ankles with his head at his feet. There is facing the door, and he's holding his cheeks apart. His sister walk up behind me and says, "You're going to have to wipe his butt. He can't do it right." I wiped the kid's butt. And when the parents came home, they were all, "Oh, we're so sorry, we forgot to tell you." My mom was kind of pissed off and didn't make me babysit them anymore. When I was 13, I had a summer job babysitting 3 siblings, a 5-year-old girl, a 2-year-old boy, and a baby boy just a few months old. One day, the 5-year-old really wanted to ride her bike, so I let her slip around the driveway for a while. When she was done, I told her to make sure she put her bike away in the garage while I took the boys inside. A few minutes later, I heard some crying coming from downstairs and didn't think much of it, thinking she'd closed the garage door and maybe it was dark, and she was afraid. When she didn't come upstairs, I went down to see what was wrong. Turns out she couldn't reach the switch to close the garage door. She stood on one of her brother's ride-on car toys, which rolled out from under her, and she fell and cut a leg on a pane of glass that was nearby. Blood, oh so much blood. She got some stitches in her leg, was put in a massive bandage for a while. The parents didn't blame me, but to this day I felt bad about what happened. Babysat Nan had for 3 kids the summer after my freshman year of college. One day the middle child ran off to play at the neighbor's without telling me. Her mom and I agreed to ground her until the following day was over. A day and a half total. She had to stay home inside and clean her room on that next afternoon, about an hour before her mom was to come home and she was to be grounded. She pulled a knife out and pointed it at me because I was ruining her life and brainwashing her mother. She chased me around the kitchen a few times before I just grabbed her arm and yanked. Then I thought when I did that I was apparently abusing her. The little sheet was used to getting her way, and thankfully I was off to my sophomore head of college. 2 weeks later, I accidentally cracked a 4-year-old in the head with a plastic baseball bat. Why would anyone let a 10-year-old babysit? Hiring a 10-year-old to babysit is like getting a horse to watch your dog. So when I was 14 or 50, I babysat quite a bit for 2 families, and nothing unusual. Then one day my grandmother called and asked if I could babysit overnight for her friend from work. Sure, no problem, she said. I could bring a friend too. Sweet friend. And I get dropped off at the house. Grandma's friend is a bit strange, and her BF is a straight creeper. Right before they left, they said there was a cartoon all ready to go, and after dinner just press play for the kids. I honestly can't remember as this was VHS or DVD, so we ate and went to the TV room. And I pressed play, and suddenly all you could hear was moaning and groaning as a very explicit porn filled the screen. Shut it off as quickly as possible, put the kids to bed shortly after, and then friend and I put the video back on at a lower volume beat. See, we were curious. This morning the BF asked if we enjoyed the cartoon. I was babysitting this kid, and he takes me to the computer to show me his called computer game. Turns out it was a free demo disc of a flight simulator game, and it just looped through a 3-minute video of the game. And the kid had no idea he wasn't actually controlling the plane at all. Haha, dumb kid. They also had a really old, skeletal black cap that I didn't even know existed until the kids had gone to bed and I was alone in their creepy family room, and out comes this cat out of nowhere looking like they're not my story but my GS. I met a childhood babys it or a few weekends ago, and after the former babysitter was out of earshot, my GF casually mentioned her babysitter used to take her with her to go meet drug dealers to pick up Drew Gus when she was like 9 years old. My first question was, how did she know what a drug deal looked like when she was 9 years old? And the weird part was that her babysitter was very open about explaining what they were doing, about what all the different kind of Drew Gus were, what they were called, what the high for each was like. At sea, I just kind of listened with my jaw drops. I'm shocked my GF didn't turn out to be all kinds of ducked up babysat 6-year-old triplets. 2 boys, 1 girl. One of them was a very sweet autistic boy. When I went to check up on the other kids for a second, the other boy had gone up the stairs, took his diaper off, and smeared poop all over the walls. I went to go clean it up with diaper wipes and threw them in the toilet. I forgot that diaper wipes, these ones unflushable, so lo and behold I had GT wipes overflowing out of the toilet bowl and in half at stain walls. It was a shitty day. When I was young, I babysat a few local kids. It was easy way to get cash, and I was one of the oldest in the neighborhood. One of the kids had some kind of severe attachment issues. Once, when I was using the bathroom, he broke the door slamming into it. He wanted to be in the same room I was, no matter what. His mother said that wasn't the first time that has happened. It was the last time for me, though. Never babysat that kid again. I used to babysit 2 boys, brothers, once a week. One was maybe 5 to 6. And the other was 2 to 3. The older one was super smart and always getting into mischief. He reminded me of Calvin from the comic strip. His behavior wasn't malicious and he was never really trying to cause trouble, but somehow trouble always found him. I tried not to play favorites, but I really adored him and had a lot of fun babysitting him. The younger one was sweet and never misbehaved like most kids. They hated going to bed, and getting them to sleep was always a long drawn out chore. One night in particular, the older one didn't want to go to bed and was pitching fit after fit. I got a little set up, and as a punishment, he didn't get to sit in on story time. He naturally did not like this, so he told me, I'm going to tell my mom you abused me. Scariest moment of my babysitting career. How do you defend yourself against a kid saying that? The worst part was the kid could tell he got a reaction out of me, so he started running around yelling, you abused me, you abused me. I waited really nervously for the parents to come home and told them immediately what happened. Turns out they'd been talking about bullying, abuse, bad touches at sea in school that week, and the mumbling did on that. I thought it was really weird that she dismissed her kid saying that so quickly, but then she told me, oh, don't worry, we nanny cam do the first few weeks you babysat. We know how great you are with them. I was so weirded out, but the next time I went over, the kid had made me a card saying he was sorry. The mom said she talked to him about it and why it was so bad to make up those kinds of lies. I kept babysitting for the boys for a few years. They always overpaid me, so that definitely helped. Music.